The Las Vegas afternoon sun beat down hard on the asphalt as Manny Pacquiao parked his modest car in front of the MGM Grand Arena. At 45, the former Filipino champion carried on his shoulders the weight of a career that had changed his life forever. His calloused hands gripped the steering wheel with the same firmness that once held boxing gloves, but now they trembled slightly with the emotion of the moment. Across the street, Erik Morales walked slowly toward the same location. The 48-year-old Mexican had arrived by bus, deliberately choosing the most humble means of transportation for this special journey. His dark eyes observed every detail of the casino's imposing architecture, remembering when he first stepped there as a young fighter, hungry for glory. It was March 19th, exactly 19 years after their first epic fight in that very location. Neither had planned the meeting, but both felt the same internal calling to return to their origins. Nostalgia had brought them back to that stage where they wrote one of the most beautiful pages in world boxing history, when they were still young warriors with immense dreams. Manny adjusted the simple cap he wore and took a deep breath. Memories flooded his mind like waves from the Pacific Ocean of his homeland. He remembered the tension, the adrenaline, the deafening noise of the crowd that shouted their names. Back then, the entire world was watching them, two modern gladiators ready to make history. Erik stopped in front of the casino steps and closed his eyes for a moment. The hot Nevada desert wind carried with it the essence of memories that would never fade. He could almost hear again the sound of the bells, the trainers' shouts, the labored breathing of two men who gave everything they had in that sacred ring. Both walked toward the main entrance, still without seeing each other. Destiny had brought them back to the same place, on the same day, moved by the same inexplicable longing. It was as if the universe had conspired for these two sports icons to meet again where it all began, where their lives intertwined forever through fists and passion for boxing. The casino's revolving door swallowed Manny first, followed seconds later by Erik. The luxurious environment contrasted with the simplicity of their casual clothes. Neon lights flashed in all directions, slot machines played their hypnotic melodies, and the constant chatter of gamblers created an urban symphony that enveloped them instantly. Manny walked slowly through the familiar corridors, his memories guiding each step. He remembered passing through there wearing a silk robe, surrounded by a noisy entourage, television cameras following every movement. Now, dressed in faded jeans and a simple t-shirt, he was just another anonymous tourist among the crowd of gamblers. Erik followed in the same direction. Moved by an invisible force, his leather boots made a rhythmic sound against the marble floor, echoing like the dance steps he used to perform before each fight. The Mexican discreetly observed the people around him, noticing how no one recognized him. Fame had faded with time, leaving only the man behind the myth. It was near the blackjack tables that their eyes met for the first time in almost a decade. Both stopped immediately, as if time had frozen. There was no surprise on their faces, only deep and silent recognition. It was as if both knew this meeting was destined to happen, that Las Vegas had called them back for a greater purpose. Neither approached immediately. They stood there, separated by just a few meters, observing each other mutually. Manny noticed the gray strands at Erik's temples, the wrinkles around his eyes that told stories of battles won and lost. Erik perceived that Manny had lost weight, that his shoulders carried the weight of responsibilities that went far beyond the ring. The silence between them was more eloquent than any word. It was the silence of two gladiators who deeply respected each other, who had shared moments of glory and pain on the same stage. Slowly, almost synchronously, both began walking toward the heart of the casino, where they knew they would find the entrance to the arena that changed their lives forever. The two men walked through the casino corridors, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly following the same destination. Their steps were measured, reflective, as if each step were a silent reverence to their shared past. The noise of machines and conversations around them seemed distant, muffled by the intensity of the moment they were experiencing. Manny observed the framed photographs on the walls, images of great sporting moments that the MGM had hosted over the years. He found a photo of himself, fist raised after a victory, and felt a shiver run down his spine. The young man in the photograph seemed to belong to another life, another world, where glory was measured in belts and newspaper headlines. Erik stopped in front of a display case showing boxing gloves autographed by various champions. Among them, he recognized a pair he had used in one of his most memorable fights. His hands closed involuntarily, remembering the sensation of leather against skin. the balanced weight that transformed his fists into instruments of art and war. As they approached the arena entrance, both felt their pulses quicken. It wasn't nervousness, but a complex mixture of nostalgia, respect, and a strange sense of completeness. It was as if they were two pieces of a puzzle finally returning to the place where they fit together perfectly. A casino employee, an elderly man in an impeccable uniform, watched them discreetly. He had worked there for over 20 years and recognized both immediately, but respected the privacy of the moment. There was something sacred about that silent encounter, something that transcended the common curiosity of sports fans. The arena doors appeared ahead of them, large and imposing like portals to another universe. Surprisingly, the main entrance was ajar. A staff member preparing for tomorrow's private exhibition must have left it open, unknowingly allowing fate to do its work. Manny and Erik stopped simultaneously, their hearts beating in the same rhythm. They knew that on the other side of those doors was the place where their lives intertwined forever, where together they wrote one of the most beautiful pages in world boxing history. The arena doors opened with a deep echo that reverberated through the empty corridors. Manny and Erik entered almost simultaneously, their steps echoing in the majestic silence of the space. The arena was empty, illuminated only by emergency lights that created long dramatic shadows over the rows of empty seats. The ring was set up in the center, prepared for a private demonstration event scheduled for the following day. Its red ropes gleamed under the dim light, like pulsing veins of a sleeping heart. Both men stopped at the entrance, their eyes fixed on that sacred square where they had shed blood, sweat, and tears in the name of glory and honor for their countries. Manny slowly descended the stairs leading to the ring. Each step a journey through time. He could hear the ghostly echoes of the crowd that once shouted his name, could feel the electric energy that filled the air on those magical nights. His hands touched the protective barrier, and he closed his eyes, allowing memories to flood him completely. Erik followed the same path, but along the opposite side of the arena. His fingers traced the ring ropes with reverence, like a pianist touching the keys of a sacred instrument. The Mexican remembered the first time he climbed up there, young and full of fire, determined to prove he deserved to be among the greats. The rough texture of the ropes brought back sensations that had been sleeping in his memory. For several minutes, the two men remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. The empty arena amplified every breath, every subtle movement. It was as if the place had its own consciousness, as if the walls kept the secrets of all the epic battles they had witnessed over the years. Finally, Manny and Erik met on the opposite side of the ring, separated only by the ropes that once defined the battlefield where they measured their strength. Their eyes met again, but this time there was something different in the atmosphere. It was no longer the gaze of adversaries, but of two men who shared a unique and unrepeatable legacy. Erik was the first to break the silence, not with words, but with a gesture. He discreetly pointed to a corner of the arena where an elderly man sat alone, almost invisible in the shadows. The stranger wore simple, worn clothes, a shabby cap on his head, and seemed to be watching them with respectful attention since they entered the arena. Having retired years ago, he still had access through old friends who managed the place, and tonight he had come for one final visit before the arena's major renovation began. Manny followed Erik's gaze and noticed the solitary man. There was something familiar about him, but he couldn't identify what. The stranger didn't seem to be a fan trying to approach, nor a casino employee. He was simply there, as if he were part of the place's very structure, like a shadow that belonged to that sacred space. The two former champions looked at each other and, in silent agreement, decided to approach the mysterious man. They walked together for the first time since they met, their steps synchronized like soldiers marching toward a common objective. The solitary figure didn't move, just watched them approach with eyes that shone with ancient wisdom. As they got closer, details of the man became clearer. He was about 70 years old, with calloused hands that told stories of hard work and a gentle smile that illuminated his wrinkled face. His clothes were clean, but clearly second-hand, and he carried a small worn backpack beside the chair where he sat. When they got close enough, the man slowly stood up, his movements revealing the stiffness of age. He greeted them with a respectful nod of his head, and then did something completely unexpected. He began to applaud, slowly, with a reverence that deeply touched the hearts of the two former boxers. The stranger's applause echoed through the empty arena, creating a symphony of recognition and respect. Manny and Erik felt simultaneously humbled and honored by the spontaneous demonstration of admiration. There was something deeply pure about that moment, something that transcended fame and glory, touching the truest essence of what it meant to be a warrior. The elderly man stopped applauding and gestured for them to come even closer. When Manny and Erik got near enough, he pointed to himself and then to the ring, making movements that suggested there was a connection between him and that place. His eyes shone with a mixture of pride and nostalgia, as if he kept precious secrets about that arena. With delicate gestures, the stranger opened his worn backpack and pulled out an album of photographs yellowed by time. The pages were carefully organized, protected by transparent plastic, revealing decades of memories preserved with care. He showed the photos to Manny and Erik, who leaned in to see better under the dim arena light. The images revealed the true identity of the mysterious man. He was a former arena employee, someone who had worked behind the scenes during the great fights, preparing the ring, organizing equipment, taking care of every detail that made the magic of great spectacles possible. In several photos he appeared in the background, always discreet, always dedicated. One photograph in particular caught the attention of the former champions. It was an image from the night of the first fight between them, but taken from an angle they had never seen. The man was in the center of the photo, adjusting the ring ropes minutes before the fight began. His concentration was total, as if he understood the historical importance of the moment he was helping to create. Manny and Erik looked at each other, simultaneously understanding the meaning of that encounter. The man wasn't just any employee, but someone who had been an integral part of their careers, a fundamental piece of the puzzle that allowed their epic battles to happen. He was one of the many anonymous heroes who made possible the glory they shared. The retired employee carefully closed the album and put it away in his backpack. Then, with a smile that radiated contentment, he gestured toward the ring, as if inviting them to relive, somehow, the magical moments they had shared in that sacred space. There was a silent proposal in his eyes, an invitation to something special and unexpected. The elderly man walked slowly to one of the ring ropes and began checking its tension, exactly as he did decades ago. His movements were precise and ritualized, each gesture loaded with decades of experience and dedication. Manny and Erik watched, fascinated, recognizing in those gestures the same perfection they had always noticed in the equipment during their fights. With almost religious reverence, the former employee climbed into the ring using the side steps. His movements were slow but sure, as if that were his natural habitat. Once inside the square, he began walking around the perimeter, checking each rope, each corner, each detail that once guaranteed the safety and integrity of the historic fights. Manny was the first to follow the example, climbing into the ring with the same reverence. His feet touched the canvas, and a wave of emotion ran through him from head to toe. It was like coming home after a long journey, like finding a part of himself that had been dormant. He walked to the center of the ring and breathed deeply, absorbing the energy of the place. Erik climbed up right after, completing the trio in the sacred space. The three men stood in the center of the ring, forming a perfect triangle. Each represented an essential part of that place's history, the warriors who fought and the man who made their fights possible. It was a boxing holy trinity, brought together by destiny in that unique moment. The retired employee then did something extraordinary. He bowed deeply before the two former champions, in a demonstration of respect that touched them deeply. It wasn't the reverence of a fan, but the recognition of a craftsman who admired the masterpiece that others had created, using the tools he had prepared with such care. Manny and Erik, moved by the same emotion, bowed simultaneously before the elderly man. In that moment, all hierarchies disappeared. There were no longer champions and employees, just three men united by love and respect for the sport that had defined their lives. It was a moment of mutual recognition, of shared gratitude, of pure and simple humanity. The three men remained in the ring for long minutes, each lost in their own thoughts, but united by an invisible connection. The empty arena around them seemed to witness that sacred moment, as if the very walls understood the importance of what was happening. It was a ritual of farewell and celebration, of recognition and gratitude. Slowly, the retired employee walked to his backpack and pulled out three small objects that would change everything. They were pieces of ring rope from their historic trilogy, cut and preserved as sacred relics. But this wasn't just a gift, it was a ceremonial passing of legacy. He offered one piece to each former champion, then did something extraordinary. He placed his weathered hands over theirs, creating a bond between past, present, and future. Manny and Erik accepted the sacred relics with trembling hands, understanding they were receiving much more than simple pieces of rope. In that moment, they made an unspoken pact. They would return together to honor not just this man, but all the invisible heroes who made greatness possible. The elderly man wasn't just one person. He represented all the forgotten hands that built legends, all the silent voices that deserved to be heard. The elderly man then pointed to the empty bleachers and made a broad gesture with his arms, as if he were blessing the entire space. His eyes shone with tears of gratitude, and it became clear that this moment meant as much to him as it did to the former champions. He had dedicated his life to serving that boxing temple, and now he received the recognition he had always deserved. When they finally descended from the ring, the three men embraced in silence. There was no need for words, as their souls had communicated in a language deeper than any human tongue. They had shared something rare and precious, a moment of pure human connection, free from ego, fame, or pretensions. As they left the arena, each following their own path, all carried with them the certainty that they had experienced something extraordinary. But this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. They knew their next step would not be inside a ring, but on a stage, in front of the world, where the story of invisible heroes would finally be told. The Las Vegas sun continued to shine outside, but for them, that day had illuminated a path toward ensuring that those who make greatness possible from the shadows would never be forgotten again.
Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.